Something ancient stirs whenever forgotten prophecies begin brushing against the edges of our modern world. It is never loud, never theatrical, never desperate to announce itself. Instead, it rises like a faint tremor beneath memory, an echo that seems older than language, older than the stories carved into stone, older even than the people who once listened. The Hopi have always believed that such echoes are not coincidences, but reminders. To them, time is not a line racing toward an ending, but a living loop, expanding, contracting, breathing in and out like a cosmic heartbeat. And every so often, that heartbeat reaches a turning point. According to one Hopi elder, that turning point sits squarely in December 2025. He did not speak of it with fear or urgency. He described it with the kind of calm that only someone who has watched many cycles pass can hold. To him, December 2025 was not a scheduled apocalypse or a mystical deadline created by outsiders. It was something much quieter, much older, a moment the universe itself had been preparing for through countless repetitions. He called it the completion of the ancient clock, a clock built not of gears or stone, but of rhythms, celestial rhythms, spiritual rhythms, the rhythms woven into the memory of the earth. For generations, Hopi watchers spoke of this clock as if it were alive. Its hands are not measured in minutes but in patterns, the wandering of stars, the trembling of seasons, the rise and retreat of human consciousness. When the world drifts too far out of harmony, the clock nudges it back. When humanity forgets what it means to be connected, the clock tightens its circle. And when an entire world cycle begins approaching its final breath, the clock allows its warnings to surface softly at first, then unmistakably. The elder explained that the fourth world has been carrying the weight of imbalance for a very long time. Each world ends, he said, not because the creator grows angry, but because the world grows tired. In Hopi stories, worlds do not collapse by punishment. They fall when the fabric of harmony becomes too strained, when arrogance replaces humility, when noise pushes out truth, when human beings choose appetite over balance. It is at that moment that the ancient clock begins to turn again, and he believed that turn would reach its culmination in December 2025. He described the earliest hints of this shift not as disasters, but as whispers, unusual weather patterns, strange currents in the ocean's depths, a sense of restlessness threading through the human heart. These early tremors, he claimed, are not random anomalies, but familiar marker signs that have appeared at the close of every world before this one. In past cycles, they were recognized. In ours, they are dismissed as chance, or noise, or statistical extremes. Yet to the elder, they all pointed in a single direction, the fourth world moving toward its moment of correction. This idea of correction lies at the center of the prophecy. The elder often used a word that doesn't translate neatly into English, a term meaning both setting right and bringing back into balance. It is not destruction, it is recalibration. The Hopi taught that worlds do not end abruptly. Instead, they reach a crossroads. One path is a continuation of imbalance, spiraling into collapse. The other is a return to harmony, guided by humility and awareness. December 2025, according to him, was the threshold where these paths would no longer run side by side but diverge. He spoke of this threshold as if it were part of something universal, not unique to the Hopi alone. When he referenced the Mayan Bactan cycles, the Hindu Ugas, or the Egyptian stories of Zep Tepi, he did so without claiming ownership. Different peoples, he said, but the same memory. To him, this convergence of prophecies was not proof of fate, but proof of pattern. Civilizations, separated by oceans and centuries, still carried the same intuition that history moves in spirals, and those spirals occasionally tighten. As he recounted these patterns, the elder's voice carried neither dread nor triumph, only recognition. He insisted that the world has entered the final arc of its spiral, where illusions strain, systems wobble, and the old scaffolding of certainty begins to crack. Not violently at first, but subtly, like hairline fractures in a vessel that has been held too tightly for too long. These fractures appear in the sky, in the earth, in the weather, and even in the quietest corners of the human mind. And each one, he believed, was part of the ancient clock calling humanity to attention. What struck many listeners was the way the elder blended the physical and the spiritual so effortlessly. To him, the earth's behavior was not separate from humanity's consciousness. The two mirrored each other. If storms grew confused, it was because people grew confused. If oceans stirred strangely, it was because the collective heart had lost its rhythm. And if the air itself seemed charged with an unnamed tension, it was because the world was preparing to turn its page. He often described this coming turn with a phrase that lingered long after the conversation ended. The world remembers what people have forgotten. In his view, humans are the last to notice when a world cycle nears completion. Animals sense it long before. The sky carries it before any storm. Even the stones, he said, feel the buildup of pressure. Only people, distracted by their own inventions, ignore the softest warnings until the harder ones arrive. But even then, the elder insisted, this shift is not meant to be feared. It is meant to be recognized. He believed that December 2025 would not announce itself with a single catastrophe, but with a change in texture, subtle, unsettling, undeniable. Time itself might feel different, faster for some, heavier for others. Patterns that once made sense might begin unraveling, and people who never cared for prophecy might suddenly feel an inexplicable awareness, as if remembering something they never knew they had forgotten. This is how worlds end, he said, and how new ones begin not with fire, but with remembrance. And so the ancient clock continues turning, one quiet click at a time, drawing the world toward a moment that has repeated itself countless times before. A moment when the fourth world exhales after a long era of tension, and humanity stands at the crossroads between continuation and awakening. The elder did not claim to know which path humanity would choose. He only believed that December 2025 would reveal whether the world is ready to correct its course or whether it will need stronger reminders as the veil thins. For now, the clock continues its silent countdown. The elder often said that before a world turns its page, the sky forgets its script. He never meant it as poetry, though it sounded like poetry. He meant it literally, as if the heavens themselves begin drifting out of their familiar patterns, hesitating in ways they have not done for ages. According to him, the first signs of the fourth world's trembling would not appear in governments, or in societies, or even in the earth beneath our feet. They would appear above us, quiet, subtle, and utterly unexplainable to anyone who still believes the sky must always behave the way it used to. He described a moment when people would look up and sense something off long before they could articulate it. The light would fall strangely, almost as though it were bending around an unseen presence. Colors would seem richer, yet somehow colder. Sunrises would carry an unfamiliar metallic glow. The horizon would feel stretched, distorted in a way that defies language. None of it violent, none of it spectacular, just wrong enough to make the human spirit falter for a breath. Scientists, of course, have terms ready for such anomalies. They speak of noctilucent clouds, shimmering like ghostly blue threads at the edge of space. They point to polar mesospheric ice crystals reflecting sunlight in ways our eyes are not used to. They explain solar halos, rare refraction events, upper atmosphere disturbances, and the increasingly frequent optical anomalies caused by shifting climate patterns. All of these explanations are tidy, contained, built to soothe the modern mind. But the elder believed such phenomena were not causes, they were symptoms. In Hopi teachings, the sky has always been the first messenger. When something shifts in the heavens, consciousness follows. Ancient skywatchers saw the heavens as a living canvas, one that reflects imbalance before the earth is forced to correct it. They believed the sky carries memory. It remembers cycles, it remembers warnings, and it remembers how worlds end, not with chaos, but with gentle distortions that whisper, "Look again." And so when the sky begins to warp, even subtly, the Hopi do not dismiss it. They listen. The elder once described a sunrise he witnessed decades ago. A sunrise that seemed to linger as if unsure whether it should continue rising at all. The colors were wrong, he said. Not brighter, not darker, just wrong. As if the sky was wearing a mask that didn't fit. To him, this was a sign not of weather, but of timing. The ancient clock was shifting gears, and the heavens were the first to respond. As these distortions spread, an emotional undercurrent rises with them. People begin experiencing a kind of soft panic, not fear of danger, but fear of recognition. Something deep in the human spirit stirs, something older than the fourth world, older than any civilization on the planet. It is as though the soul remembers these signs, even if the mind does not. The elder believed this internal stirring is the first crack in the illusion of normalcy. He said that many would feel restless without knowing why. They might wake from vivid dreams, unable to recall details, but certain the dreams carried some kind of message. Others would feel strangely alert, as if something were trying to get their attention. Even those who never look at the sky would sense a subtle pressure and atmospheric tension that makes familiar days feel slightly foreign. These shifts, he insisted, are not coincidences. They are calls to awareness. Generations of Hopi storytellers speak of nights when the stars pulse with alien rhythms, or when the sky dims for no reason, or when colors flash in the corner of one's vision and vanish before the mind can grasp them. In past world transitions, such signs were accepted as part of the Earth's rhythm. In the fourth world, however, they are dismissed as optical illusions, tricks of light, or failures of perception. Yet to those who still hold the old memory, these disturbances signal the thinning of the veil between what is seen and what is real. The sky does not change without purpose. It changes to remind. The elder explained that the heavens act as a boundary between worlds. When that boundary grows thin, human consciousness begins to shift, whether people want it to or not. Some feel disoriented, as if their thoughts were not fully anchored to the present moment. Others experience an unusual clarity, a sharpness of intuition that seems to come from nowhere. A few feel watched not by something malicious, but by something ancient, patient, and waiting. This sensation, he said, often marks the beginning of the transition from the outer signs to the inner ones. The sky is the first messenger because it speaks in symbols subtle enough to be ignored, yet persistent enough to unsettle. If the world refuses to listen, the signs become louder, moving closer, pressing deeper. When the sky changes, the elder said, the world beneath it prepares to follow. He often compared the sky's behavior to the first tremors before a great thaw. The air thickens, light wavers, a strange stillness falls over moments that should feel ordinary. These shifts might pass unnoticed by the untrained eye, but the spirit recognizes them instantly. And when enough of these distortions accumulate, a quiet recognition dawns across humanity. Something is stirring behind the scenes of reality. To the elder, these distortions were not warnings of disaster, but invitations to awareness. They push people to look up again, to question again, to remember again. The Hopi have long believed that forgetting is the true danger, not storms, not quakes, not celestial anomalies. Forgetting the patterns of the world is what blinds humanity to the choices that lie ahead. As the fourth world nears its culmination, the elder believed the sky would grow increasingly expressive. More halos, more strange clouds glowing after sunset, more shimmering waves of light that have no scientific explanation at all. As December 2025 draws closer, the veil thin already slips further. What once felt like distant anomalies becomes an undeniable pattern, and so humanity enters a stage where the heavens no longer behave as they once did. The old script dissolves. A new one waits. The skies shift, subtly but insistently, preparing to usher in the next sign, the moment when these distortions stop hovering above and begin sinking inward, into the silent chambers of the human spirit. Because once the sky speaks, the world within soon begins to crack. The elder often said that after the sky forgets its script, the next shift does not come from above or below, but from within. It begins quietly, so quietly that most people mistake it for their own private burdens. A sleepless night, a sudden wave of unease, a dream too vivid to ignore but too fragmented to understand. To the modern mind, these sensations are symptoms, stress, exhaustion, but in Hopi teachings, they are the first fractures in the invisible architecture of the human spirit. The elder called this stage the spiritual cracking, and he believed it marks the true beginning of the fourth world's unraveling. This cracking is not a collapse, it is a revealing. It creeps in slowly, like a hairline fracture crawling across glass. At first, it is little more than a subtle shift in perception, the sense that time is moving strangely, faster for some, heavier for others. People begin noticing they are less comfortable with routines they once embraced. The familiar feels off, not wrong, not broken, but misaligned. Like a melody played just out of tune, or a story missing a line you swear used to be there. The elder explained that in previous world transitions, this internal disturbance was recognized for what it was, a sign that the soul was waking up. In our era, however, it is often interpreted as anxiety, existential dread, or the personal fallout of a rapidly changing society. And yet, he insisted, beneath the psychological explanations lies something far older, a deep intuition whispering that the world is shifting in ways words cannot capture. Many will feel torn in two directions. Fear pulls them toward the familiar, even when the familiar has long ceased to serve them. Awakening pulls them toward the unknown, toward questions they have avoided, toward truths they once preferred not to see. These two emotional currents move through the heart simultaneously, creating a tension that feels like standing between two worlds, the fading illusions of the fourth world and the emerging clarity of what comes next. Some experience this shift as restlessness. They sense that something is approaching, something vast yet undefined. Others feel weighed down, carrying emotions they cannot name, as though their spirit is sorting through memories that do not belong to this life alone. A few find themselves overwhelmed by a sudden need for meaning, questioning the systems, structures, and identities they once obeyed without hesitation. The elder believed these reactions were not coincidences, but symptoms of a deeper realignment. When the spirit begins to tremble, he said, the mind searches for something to hold on to, but what it seeks is the very thing it must release. He spoke of dreams as one of the earliest markers. Not just ordinary dreams, but dreams that feel like messages, symbolic, disjointed, filled with light or shadow, repeating themselves in new forms. In Hopi tradition, dreams are the language of the soul, especially during world transitions. As the veil thins, this language becomes clearer. People may wake in the middle of the night with a racing heart, certain that something important has just slipped through their fingers. The meaning may not be accessible, but the impact lingers. Others may experience flashes of intuition, moments of clarity so sharp they seem out of place in everyday life. Sudden understanding, sudden recognition, sudden knowing. These sparks can be unsettling for those unaccustomed to trusting their inner voice. They may dismiss them as coincidence, yet the elder insisted that such moments are the spirit adjusting to the thinning veil, preparing for the greater shifts to come. As this spiritual cracking deepens, the elder believed it would expose something humanity rarely confronts, the fragility of certainty. People begin realizing how easily their beliefs can be shaken, how quickly their internal foundations can shift. Systems that once seemed unbreakable reveal their flaws. Values once taken for granted feel hollow. Narratives that shaped entire lifetimes suddenly unravel under their own weight. This is not chaos, it is clarity breaking through the cracks. Psychologists may describe these sensations as emotional overload or existential pressure, but to the elder, such interpretations explain the symptoms while ignoring the cause. A world does not change outside before it changes inside, he said. The ground must tremble in the heart before it trembles beneath the feet. And so, as the spiritual cracking spreads, relationships begin to strain, not out of malice, but because the truths buried beneath years of routine rise to the surface. People find themselves unable to pretend, to avoid, to silence the inner voice that has grown too loud. Decisions once simple become impossible. Paths once clear now diverge. This emotional turbulence is not punishment. It is preparation. The elder often compared this stage to the moment before dawn when shadows grow long and indistinct. The world looks different not because it has changed, but because the light revealing it has begun to shift. In this dimness, people may feel profoundly alone even surrounded by others. They may sense themselves standing at the edge of something immense and waiting. But he insisted that this sense of isolation is temporary. It is the spirit recalibrating, shedding what cannot cross the threshold into the next world. Some will resist. They will cling to the structures, identities, and illusions that define their sense of safety. They will deny the inner cracking, patching it with distraction or anger or blind certainty. For them, this stage will feel like collapse. Others will surrender. They will allow the cracking to widen, letting the old beliefs fall away. They will choose honesty over comfort and curiosity over fear. For them, this stage will feel like awakening. And then there are those in the middle, the ones who feel both at once. They sense the world pulling them forward and backward in the same breath. The elder believed these people were the most important, for they would carry the memory of the fourth world into whatever comes next, serving as bridges between cycles. Do not fear the cracking, he said. It is the soul remembering its shape. As this inner trembling intensifies, it prepares the way for the next stage. Because once the spirit begins to fracture, the earth itself begins to mirror the shift. The elder taught that the world outside always follows the world within, and when the inside cracks, the outside soon trembles. The sky has spoken, the spirit has stirred, and now the earth prepares to answer. The elder often said that the earth listens more closely than people realize. It listens not with ears, but with memory layered through stone, through water, through the deep, slow heartbeat that holds the planet together. And when humanity's inner world begins to fracture, the earth begins to shift in response, not out of anger, not out of vengeance, but out of an ancient instinct to restore balance. He believed this is how every world ends. First the sky, then the spirit, and finally the ground beneath our feet. Only when all three have spoken does the next stage emerge. This next stage, he said, is purification, a word often misunderstood by modern ears. To many, it sounds harsh, even apocalyptic, but the elder insisted that its meaning in Hopi teachings is neither doom nor divine punishment. It is cleansing. It is the world exhaling the tension it has carried for generations. It is the old energy being released so that something new can take root. The first signs of this purification appear in the earth itself. Subtle shifts at first, unusual warmth rising from regions long considered stable, strange thermal pockets blooming deep in the oceans, atmospheric layers bending weather in ways meteorologists cannot quite explain. Scientists confine these anomalies to graphs and models, labeling them outliers or oscillations. But to the elder, they are the planet adjusting its internal rhythm. The earth carries pressure the same way a heart carries sorrow, he said. When the burden grows too heavy, it must release. Once these thermal shifts spread, the next signs ripple through the planet's magnetic field. The wandering of the poles, once a distant geologic curiosity, begins accelerating. Animals migrate off course. Birds fall from the sky in clusters as their internal compasses falter. People wake with unexplained disorientation, a dizziness that feels deeper than the body. Satellites glitch, navigation systems falter. The elder never claimed this meant catastrophe. He simply said it was a reminder that the geomagnetic field is a living, breathing presence and that it reacts when the world prepares to turn its page. Then come the storms. Not just stronger storms, but storms with personalities baffling spirals. Unpredictable paths, sudden intensifications as if the atmosphere itself were releasing long-held tension. Rain falls in aggressive rhythms. Winds carve strange patterns into the land. Seasons blur, refusing to stay within their ancient boundaries. Meteorologists might attribute these patterns to complex climate interactions, but in Hopi teachings, storms are the earth's emotions made visible. When harmony is lost, the elder said, the winds speak, but of all the messengers within the purification, water remains the most eloquent. The oceans behave strangely. Warmth flares in deep pockets where no warmth should be. Currents shift as if pulled by an unseen hand. The surface ripples with disturbances unconnected to storms or tides. Hopi tradition calls water the great communicator of worlds, the first medium to react when a cycle shifts. When water stirs unnaturally, it is usually a precursor to the awakening of the earth's deeper layers. Small tremors soon follow. A vibration beneath old bedrock, a rumble under cities thought immovable. Not massive quakes at first, just murmurs. The earth clearing its throat before speaking louder. It is during this time that humanity begins to sense more than physical instability. Society itself starts to fracture. The elder warned that this social unraveling would be one of the clearest signs that purification had begun. He described it as division that cuts deeper than disagreement, families pulling apart not because they choose to, but because they can no longer hear each other. Communities breaking not from conflict but from the loss of shared truth. Conversations turning into battles. Debates turning into war zones of certainty, each side convinced the other is blind. Before a world is purified, he said, the heart of humanity becomes tangled. Modern life fuels this entanglement. Endless streams of information, algorithms designed to provoke, distractions flooding every waking moment. Clarity becomes a rare commodity. Noise becomes the rule. In Hopi teachings, this state is called the time of confusion, a period when truth becomes fragmented and lies multiply like shadows. The elder believed this era had already begun long before people realized they were living inside it. Emotionally, this division creates a sense of dislocation. People feel overwhelmed, isolated, or strangely hollow, as if the ground beneath their relationships had subtly shifted. Trust becomes fragile. Identity becomes contested. Many retreat into fear, trying desperately to hold on to the structures that defined their world. Others react with anger, striking out blindly at whatever seems responsible for their discomfort. And yet, a small but growing number ride the turbulence with quiet clarity, recognizing that the chaos is not destruction but purification and unraveling meant to reveal what no longer serves. This revelation marks the beginning of the Great Purification proper. According to the elder, purification unfolds in waves. The first wave exposes what has been concealed. Institutions built on deception begin to fracture. Governments struggle to maintain narratives that no longer hold. Systems once considered unshakable suddenly reveal their weaknesses. Hidden motives surface in unexpected places. What once stood tall now teeters under the weight of its own contradictions. The elders said these collapses would feel frightening to many, but they are necessary. What is built on dishonor, he said, cannot survive the turning of worlds. The second wave moves inward. It exposes the falsehoods individuals carry within themselves, old fears, unresolved wounds, beliefs inherited from others without examination. People find themselves face to face with truths they have avoided, sometimes for years, sometimes for lifetimes. Some resist this confrontation, and for them, purification feels like chaos. Others accept it, and for them, purification feels like clarity. It is during this second wave that people begin to shed identities, habits, and patterns that cannot enter the next world. But purification is not the end. It is the threshold. Because once falsehood falls away, something unexpected begins to rise in its place. The elder called this next stage the Great Revealing, the moment when truth, long buried beneath noise and illusion, begins to surge into the open. He described the revealing as a force that does not originate from any institution, leader, or nation. It emerges from a deeper source of presence woven into the very structure of the universe. It does not judge, it illuminates. It does not punish, it unveils. He believed this force acts like a rising light, pressing gently but firmly against every corner of human life, dissolving shadows that have lingered for generations. People may experience this stage as heightened intuition, sharper awareness, or vivid dreams that feel like predictions rather than memories. Others may feel watched not with malice, but with expectation, as if something ancient is observing humanity's choices. Secrets unravel, deception collapses, masks fall, the truth becomes unavoidable. This is the revealing that prepares the way for the next sign, the return of the Blue Kachina, the Harbinger of Truth. And when that presence arrives, the final threshold emerges, the doorway leading out of the fourth world and toward the fifth. Among all Hopi teachings, none carries more weight or more misunderstanding than the prophecy of the Blue Kachina. Outsiders have long tried to interpret it as a comet, a star, a celestial visitor, or even an extraterrestrial being. But the elder was clear. The Blue Kachina is not a body in the sky. It is a presence, a frequency, a force of truth that arrives when a world has reached its final moment of imbalance. Its color, he said, is symbolic, the cold, piercing light of reality unfiltered by illusion. And when it returns, deception has nowhere left to hide. The elder believed that December 2025 marks the ignition point of this presence. Not the climax, not the final act, but the moment the veil becomes thin enough for truth to move freely between worlds. In previous cycles, this presence signaled the last phase of purification. In this cycle, he believed it would do the same, pressing into the fourth world with a clarity so sharp that even those who try to ignore it will feel its edge. The Blue Kachina reveals, through contrast, what is honest grows stronger, what is false collapses. Leaders who built their authority on secrecy or manipulation find their influence dissolving. Institutions that appeared unshakable suddenly falter under the weight of their own contradictions. Personal relationships long held together by pretense begin cracking as unspoken truths rise to the surface. The elder described this as the Blue Kachina turning the world transparent, restoring the natural balance that illusion had disturbed. Some will experience this presence as overwhelming, not because it harms, but because it exposes. People accustomed to hiding from themselves confront parts of their spirit they buried long ago. Old wounds reopen not to cause pain but to be healed. Patterns of denial collapse. Masks slip, even in solitude. Secrets feel heavier until they are released. The elder compared this to standing in front of a mirror that reflects not just the body, but the entire life behind its every choice, every intention, every truth avoided. Yet for others, the Blue Kachina feels like clarity. They sense a deepening intuition, a sudden sharpening of perception. Dreams become more symbolic, more luminous. Thoughts align in ways that once felt impossible. They feel guided gently, but unmistakably toward people, places, and paths that resonate with truth. For them, the presence is not a confrontation. It is a homecoming. As the Blue Kachina spreads its influence, the distinction between illusion and authenticity grows unbearable to ignore. The elder believed this reveals the fundamental choice that defines the end of a world. Will humanity cling to the collapsing structures of the fourth world, or will it become the seeds of the fifth? This choice is not collective at first. It is personal, made in small, quiet moments where individuals decide whether to return to comfort or walk toward awakening. The fifth world, according to Hopi teachings, is not guaranteed. It is not a promised paradise waiting behind the curtain. It is a possibility, a new cycle shaped by those who choose harmony over chaos, humility over arrogance, truth over noise. The elder described this world as one where humanity finally remembers its place, not as the conqueror of nature, but as its caretaker, where communities rise from a foundation of responsibility and respect, where the veil between the physical and the spiritual thins enough to allow deeper understanding and deeper connection. He often spoke of individuals who would carry the first light of the fifth world, not prophets, not chosen ones, but ordinary people whose hearts have been softened by the purification, whose minds have grown quiet enough to hear the inner voice, whose spirits have shed the weight of illusions. These are the seeds, those who will plant the beginning of the next cycle. But the elder warned that the path to this new world is not gentle. As the presence of the Blue Kachina intensifies, humanity feels a growing heaviness and emotional pressure that builds as unresolved truths demand release. Many will describe it as an internal storm, confusion, sorrow, anger, longing. Others will feel an inexplicable weight in their dreams, their interactions, their thoughts. This heaviness is not a burden, he said. It is a reminder. It signals that the cosmic bell has rung, that the fourth world has reached its final stretch, and that the choices made in this era will echo far beyond one lifetime. As the fifth world approaches, the world will not announce its arrival with spectacle. It will not descend with fire falling from the sky, or a single dramatic event that reshapes the earth in an instant. Instead, it will emerge quietly through decisions, through awakenings, through the subtle turning of human hearts. One person chooses truth, another chooses compassion, another chooses awareness. These small shifts converge until the fabric of the world itself begins to change. When that moment arrives, the elder said, people may not even realize a new world has begun. It may feel like a gentle dawn, the kind that brightens so slowly that only those paying close attention notice the first hint of light. And yet, that light grows calmly, persistently, clearly, until it becomes impossible to deny that something profound has changed. This is why the elder urged people not to wait for a sign of spectacle. The real shift happens in consciousness, not catastrophe. The doorway to the fifth world is not carved in a stone or written in the sky. It opens in the quiet choices of awakened individuals, in the remembrance that humanity is not separate from the earth, but woven into it, in the understanding that truth does not rise to punish, but to guide. And as the narrative of the fourth world draws toward its end, a gentle stillness settles in. The patterns become visible. The meaning becomes unmistakable. Each sign, from the trembling sky to the stirring spirit, from the shifting earth to the rising division, forms a single message repeated across generations. The world is turning its page. In the final moments of the elder's teaching, he did not offer predictions or warnings. He offered a mirror. He said that prophecy is not about fate. It is about recognition. It does not tell us what will happen, but what we must see before we choose what comes next. The Great Purification, the revealing, the Blue Kachina, none of these are punishments. They are invitations to awaken, invitations to become conscious participants in the shaping of a new world. And so, the closing question rises softly, like the last echo of an ancient drum. Are we entering a new cycle or hearing only the imagination of forgotten ancestors? Only the choices made now will answer.